I've been a funeral director in Shreveport for 19 years. I've prepared bodies, embalmed them, dressed them, made them presentable for families who needed one last look at someone they loved. I understand decomposition. I understand what happens to human tissue over time. What I saw in that casket made me question everything I thought I knew. The call came in February. A development company had purchased land on the edge of town, old property that used to be part of Magnolia Grove Cemetery back in the 30s. Most of the graves had been relocated in the 60s when they built the highway, but apparently they'd missed a section. Ground-penetrating radar found 12 coffins still buried there. The city hired my firm to handle the exhumations and reburials. Standard procedure. Happens more often than people think. Old cemeteries get absorbed by urban sprawl. Bodies have to be moved. We started on a Monday morning. Cold for Louisiana. Maybe 40 degrees. The kind of cold that gets into your bones when you're standing on damp ground. The first 11 exhumations went smooth. The coffins were mostly collapsed. Wood rot, metal corrosion. Some contained bones and fabric remnants. Others were nearly empty, just stains in the soil where bodies used to be. 90 years underground does that. The 12th coffin was different. We found it at the far edge of the property, under a bare pecan tree, about 7 feet down. When the backhoe cleared the last layer of soil, I saw metal. Not rusted, not corroded. Dark gray steel, almost black, with rivets along the seams. "That's a sealed casket," said my assistant, a young guy named Corey Blake. He'd been with me for 3 years, good worker, steady hands. They didn't use those much back then. He was right. Sealed caskets, the kind with rubber gaskets and airtight seals, didn't become common until the 50s. But here was one from 1932, according to the survey records. We hoisted it out with straps. The weight felt wrong. Too heavy. A collapsed casket, even metal, shouldn't weigh this much after 90 years. We loaded it onto the flatbed truck, transported it to the funeral home, set it on the preparation table in the back room. That's where we'd open it, assess the remains, transfer them to a new casket for reburial. The manufacturer's plate on the side was still legible. Eternal Rest Casket Company, model SR12, hermetically sealed. And below that, a name engraved on a small brass plate, Josephine Pruitt, 1898 to 1932. I ran the name through parish records, found her death certificate. Josephine Pruitt, age 34, cause of death, hemorrhagic fever. That made sense. Sealed casket, infectious disease. They would have wanted to contain any contamination. Corey helped me position the casket. We wore full protective gear, gloves, masks, face shields. Standard protocol for any remains this old, especially with a communicable disease on the death certificate. "You want a photograph before we open?" Corey asked. I nodded. Documentation, always document. Took pictures from every angle. The casket was pristine. No dents, no damage. Just that dark gray metal with beads of condensation on the surface. Condensation. Inside a sealed casket. 90 years underground. That should have been my first warning. I found the seal release. Modern sealed caskets have them, a key mechanism that releases the gasket pressure. This one was old style, a lever near the foot end. "Ready?" I asked. Corey nodded. I pulled the lever, heard a hiss. Like opening a vacuum-sealed jar, air pressure equalizing. Then a click as the seal broke. That's when the smell hit. Not decay. Not the sweet, sick stench of decomposition. Iron, pure iron, like a slaughterhouse, like the inside of a butcher's freezer. the metallic tang so strong I could taste it through my mask. Corey stepped back. "What the hell?" I lifted the lid, just an inch, to assess before full opening. Fluid poured out. Not seeped, not dripped. Poured. Thick, dark, red-black liquid, viscous like syrup, flowing over the casket's edge onto the table. It pooled on the stainless steel surface. Spread. Dripped onto the floor with wet slapping sounds. "Close it!" Corey shouted. "Close it!" But I was frozen, staring. Because the fluid was warm, I could feel heat radiating from it, could see steam rising in the cold room. I lifted the lid further. Josephine Pruitt lay inside, and she looked like she'd died yesterday, not preserved, not mummified, not leathered or discolored. She looked fresh. Her skin had color, pale but not corpse pale, not gray. Her hair was dark, neatly arranged around her face. She wore a blue dress, not faded, not rotted, intact. But it was her veins that made my stomach turn. They were visible beneath her skin, dark lines running up her neck, across her hands. And they were swollen, distended, like they were still carrying blood. Like her heart might start beating any second. More fluid pooled around her. It had soaked into her dress, stained it darker. The casket was full of it, at least 2 inches deep, and it was still leaking out, running over the sides. "We need to call someone," Corey said. His voice was shaking. "This isn't normal. This isn't—" "Get the sample containers," I said. My voice came out steady, even though my hands weren't. "We need to document this. Test the fluid." "Are you insane? We need to seal that thing back up and—" "We're funeral directors. We deal with bodies. This is a body. We document it." But I didn't believe my own words, because this wasn't just a body. This was something else. Something wrong. I took samples of the fluid, filled 3 vials. The liquid was warm against my gloved hands, thick. It clung to the container sides like paint. I photographed everything. Josephine's face, her hands. Those swollen veins, the pool of fluid, the inside of the casket, lined with some kind of rubberized material, not the usual velvet or satin. Then I touched her hand, just briefly, to check for rigidity. Her skin was pliable, soft, not rigid, not bloated, not leathery. It felt like living tissue. And beneath my fingers, I swear I felt warmth. Corey made a sound, halfway between a gasp and a sob. Her face. Look at her face. I looked. Josephine's mouth had changed. It had been closed when I first opened the casket. Now it was slightly open, just a crack. Lips parted like she was about to speak or breathe. "We're done," I said. "Close the lid." We sealed the casket, locked the lever, cleaned up the fluid as best we could. It stained the stainless steel, left dark marks that wouldn't come off no matter how much we scrubbed. I sent the samples to a lab in Baton Rouge, told them I needed a full analysis, chemical composition, biological markers, everything. The results came back 3 days later. The fluid was blood, human blood, with active hemoglobin, oxygen carrying capacity intact, white blood cells present, red blood cells that weren't broken down or degraded, fresh blood, 90 years after burial. The lab called me personally. The technician's voice was confused. "Mr. Garrett, there must be contamination in your samples. This blood it's viable. It's like it was drawn yesterday. That's impossible from remains this old." "I know," I said. "We'd like to run more tests. Can you provide additional samples?" No, I hung up. That night, I went back to the funeral home, alone. I needed to see the casket again. Needed to confirm what I'd seen. Needed to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. The casket was in cold storage. We'd moved it there to contain the smell, to slow any biological processes. The room was kept at 38 degrees. I opened the storage unit. The casket was warm. I put my hand on the metal. It was warm. Not room temperature, body temperature, like something inside was generating heat. I should have left. Should have sealed it back up, called the city, told them to bury it again and forget it existed. Instead, I opened it. The smell of iron hit me again, stronger now. The fluid level had risen. It was nearly to the rim of the casket. And Josephine Pruitt's eyes were open, not glazed, not filmed over, open, clear. Brown eyes staring at the lid, at nothing, at everything. And her chest, I swear, her chest moved. Just slightly, like a shallow breath. Like lungs inflating, deflating. I slammed the lid shut, locked it, backed away so fast I hit the storage unit door. My phone was in my hand. I don't remember taking it out. I called the city morgue, asked for the medical examiner, told him we had a situation, told him I needed help. He came at midnight, brought 2 assistants. We opened the casket together. Josephine Pruitt looked exactly as she had that afternoon. Eyes open, chest still, the fluid still pooling around her, her veins still swollen and dark. The medical examiner took samples, examined her, checked for any signs of life. Pupil response, pulse, heart sounds. Nothing. She was dead, clinically, completely, dead. But her blood was alive. He called it adipocere, grave wax, a chemical process where body fat converts to a waxy substance in the right conditions. He said the sealed casket created a perfect environment, low oxygen, high moisture, that the fluid was just liquefied tissue. He wrote it up as advanced liquefaction with unusual preservation characteristics. But before he left, he pulled me aside. "I've been doing this for 30 years, he said quietly. "I've never seen anything like that. Her blood is circulating. I don't know how. I don't know why. But something in that body is still functioning." We buried Josephine Pruitt the next day. Different cemetery, new casket. We transferred her carefully, sealed her up again, lowered her into a concrete vault, covered her with 6 feet of earth. Corey quit the following week. Said he couldn't work with bodies anymore. Couldn't stop thinking about her eyes, about that fluid, about the way her chest moved. I still work funerals. Still prepare bodies, still do exhumations when they're needed. But I think about Josephine Pruitt every time I open a casket. Every time I see veins beneath pale skin. Every time I smell iron in the air. Because I documented it as liquefaction. I wrote the report, followed protocol. But privately, in the part of my mind that works at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep, I know the truth. She looked alive. And somewhere under 6 feet of earth, in a sealed casket in a concrete vault, her blood is still warm, still moving, still waiting. I've been in the funeral business for 14 years. Started as an apprentice at my uncle's mortuary in Lafayette, worked my way up to director. I've handled every kind of service, every kind of death. Accidents, illness, old age, violence. You learn to separate the person from the remains. You have to. Otherwise, the work breaks you. But sometimes the work breaks you anyway. The Devereaux family had owned a private crypt at Cypress Gardens Cemetery since 1911. One of those old above-ground tombs you see in Louisiana, white marble, carved angels, iron gates. The kind of resting place that costs more than most people's houses. 7 generations of Devereaux were interred there, sealed inside the family vault where summer heat could reach 120 degrees and winter never really came. The last Devereaux, a woman named Camille, died in March. No children, no siblings. The family line ended with her. Her will stipulated that the crypt be dismantled and all remains relocated to a larger Memorial Garden cemetery in Baton Rouge, closer to where her late husband's family was buried. She wanted everyone together. The disinterment order came through in April. My firm got the contract. It was a big job, 14 caskets, over a century of burials. All had to be carefully removed, documented, and transported. We started on a Thursday morning. Me, my assistant Garrett Landry, and 2 workers from the cemetery. The crypt was maybe 12 feet by 8 feet inside. Shelves along the walls, each one holding a casket. Some were ornate, some were simple, all of them old. The oldest was from 1911, just bones and dust inside a collapsed wooden box. The newest was Camille Devereaux herself, buried 3 months earlier in a modern sealed casket. The one that got me was number 7, middle shelf, left side. The nameplate read Lawrence Devereaux, 1923 to 1959. 36 years old when he died. The casket was steel, dark bronze, dented in places. The seal had failed decades ago. You could see rust around the seam. We pulled it out carefully, set it on the gurney. The weight felt normal, maybe 200 pounds. Body plus casket, standard. But when we moved it, something shifted inside. Not a slide, not bones settling. Something heavier, more solid, like the body itself had moved. Garrett looked at me. Gas buildup? Probably, I said. Let's get it outside. We wheeled the gurney out of the crypt. The April sun was bright, hot already. We'd set up a covered work area beside the transport van, a tent with examination tables where we could assess each casket before loading. Protocol required us to open each one, verify the remains match the death certificate, document condition, make sure everything transferred correctly to the new caskets. I'd opened 13 already that morning. Bones mostly, some mummified tissue. One was nearly empty, just a stain and some fabric. Nothing unusual, nothing that bothered me. Lawrence Devereaux's casket was different. I broke the corroded seal. The smell hit immediately. Not rot, not decomposition, dust, old air. That specific scent of enclosed spaces that haven't been opened in decades. Like attics. Like closets in abandoned houses. I lifted the lid. Lawrence Devereaux was remarkably intact, not preserved. Not like embalming had kept him fresh, but intact. His features were still recognizable. High cheekbones, strong jaw, dark hair, though much of it had fallen out. His suit was faded, had been black once, now more gray-brown. His hands were folded across his chest, skin like old leather, mummified. Standard for above-ground burial in Louisiana heat. The combination of high temperature and low moisture desiccates bodies, turns them into natural mummies. I'd seen it before. But his eyes were open, just slightly. The lids weren't fully closed, maybe a 1/4-inch gap, enough to see the eyes underneath. They were cloudy, milky white with hints of brown, glazed over with a film of death and time. But they looked aware. That's the only word I can use. They looked like they were seeing something. Garrett moved closer, stared. That's normal, right? Eyes opening post-mortem? Sometimes, I said. Muscles relax, lids retract. Decomposition gas can create pressure that forces them open. I was reciting textbook answers, trying to convince myself as much as him. I took photographs, documented the body's condition, made notes on the transfer form. Then I closed the lid, sealed it temporarily. We'd put him in a new casket tomorrow after I'd ordered one that matched the family's specifications. We loaded Lawrence into the van, transported him back to the funeral home, set him in the preparation room, a climate-controlled space where we store remains during processing. The room was empty except for Lawrence's casket. We placed it on a table, locked the door. Standard security protocol. I went home around 6 p.m., ate dinner, tried to watch television, but I kept thinking about those eyes, the way they'd looked aware, the way they'd seemed to be seeing even though they were dead and clouded, and couldn't possibly see anything. I slept badly, kept waking up, kept thinking I heard something, movement, breathing. Nothing there when I turned on the lights. I got to the funeral home at 7 a.m., earlier than usual. I wanted to finish the Devereaux transfer, wanted to get Lawrence into his new casket and seal him up and send him to Baton Rouge and never think about him again. I unlocked the preparation room, turned on the lights. Lawrence Devereaux's casket sat on the table exactly where we'd left it. But something felt wrong. The air felt different, heavier, like pressure before a storm. I approached the casket, put my hand on the lid. The metal was warm. Not cold like it should have been in the climate-controlled room. Warm, almost body temperature. I opened it. Lawrence Devereaux's eyes were closed. Completely closed. Lids pressed tight together. No gap, no glimpse of clouded eyes underneath. Just smooth, leathered skin where the eyes had been open yesterday. My hands started shaking. I backed away from the table, stared at the body, at those closed eyes. "Garrett," I called. My voice came out hoarse. "Garrett, get in here." He came running, saw my face, saw the open casket. "What's wrong?" "His eyes," I said. "They were open yesterday. You saw them. They were open." Garrett looked at Lawrence, at the closed eyes, at me. Maybe you remember wrong?" I photographed him. I documented it. His eyes were open. I pulled out my phone, found the photos from yesterday, showed Garrett. There it was, clear as anything. Lawrence Devereaux, eyes partially open, cloudy, staring. Garrett's face went pale. "But they're closed now." "I know. Did someone come in? Did anyone else have access to this room?" "No, it was locked. I'm the only one with a key." We stood there in silence, staring at the body, at those closed eyes. "Muscle contraction," Garrett said finally. "Maybe the eyelid muscles contracted overnight. Pulled the lids shut. Muscles don't work that way after death, especially not after 65 years. Then what? You think he closed them himself?" I didn't answer, because that's exactly what I thought. And saying it out loud would make me sound insane. I examined the body more closely, checked for any signs of disturbance, for movement, for anything that would explain the closed eyes. Nothing. Everything else was exactly as it had been. Same position, same folded hands, same faded suit. Just the eyes. Different. I called the medical examiner, asked if muscle contraction could close eyes post-mortem after decades. He said no. Said once rigidity passes, muscles stay relaxed. Said the only way eyes would close is if someone physically closed them. But nobody had been in that room. Nobody except Lawrence Devereaux. I transferred him to the new casket that afternoon, worked quickly, didn't look at his face more than necessary, sealed him up, loaded him into the transport vehicle. The driver came by at 3 p.m., picked up all 14 Devereaux caskets, signed the transfer documents, drove away toward Baton Rouge. I watched the van disappear down the road, felt relief wash over me. It was over. Lawrence Devereaux was someone else's problem now. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those eyes. Open, then closed. No explanation, no rational answer. I went back to the preparation room at midnight. Don't know why. Maybe I needed to see it empty. Needed to confirm he was really gone. The room was empty, table bare, everything cleaned and ready for the next case. But on the floor, directly where Lawrence's casket had been, was a small puddle. Clear liquid. Like tears. Like water. Like something had wept during the night. I knelt beside it, touched it with my finger. It was warm. I quit the next morning, told my uncle I needed a break. Needed time away from the business. He understood. Said the work gets to everyone eventually. Said I'd be back when I was ready. But I'm not going back. Because I understand something now that I didn't before. The dead aren't always still. They're not always passive. Sometimes they respond. Sometimes they react. Sometimes they close their eyes when they don't want to be seen anymore. And sometimes they open them again when they do. I called the memorial garden in Baton Rouge 3 days ago. Asked how the Devereaux reburials went. The coordinator said everything was fine. All 14 caskets interred without incident. But when I asked specifically about Lawrence Devereaux, she paused. "Funny you should mention him," she said. When we opened his casket for final verification, his eyes were open. Just slightly. The family requested we close them before sealing the tomb. "And did you?" I asked. "Of course, I closed them myself. Made sure they stayed shut. I didn't ask her to check if they'd opened again. Didn't want to know. Because some questions don't have answers you want to hear. I work at a hardware store now. Sell paint and tools. Go home at 5. Sleep through the night. But sometimes I wonder about Lawrence Devereaux, about what he sees through those cloudy eyes when he opens them, about what he's looking for, about whether he'll keep opening them and closing them for decades more, trapped in darkness, waiting for something only he understands. And I'm grateful I'll never have to see him again. But I still check my phone sometimes. Look at that photograph from April. Lawrence Devereaux, eyes open, staring at nothing. Or maybe staring at me. Maybe knowing that someday, decades from now, someone will open my casket too. And maybe my eyes will be open. And maybe they'll close on their own when no one's watching. Because death isn't an ending. It's just a different kind of waiting. I've been digging graves in Caddo Parish for 23 years. It's honest work. Quiet work. You learn the soil, the water table, the way clay holds versus how sand shifts. You learn to read the earth like some people read books. But I never learned to read that plot in Section 7. It started in March. We buried a man named Dale Roscoe. Heart attack, 56. Left behind a wife and 2 daughters. Standard service, standard depth. 6 feet measured twice. The soil was good, mostly clay with some loam. The kind that packs tight, drains well. No issues. I backfilled the grave myself. Took my time, tamped it down in layers like I always do. By the time I finished, The plot was level, solid. I planted the temporary marker and went home. 3 days later, after a night of rain, I came back to check the grounds. The grave had sunk, not settled. Sunk, like someone had pulled a plug underneath and let the earth drain away. The depression was maybe 8 inches deep, running the full length of the coffin. The grass around it looked undisturbed, but that plot, it had just dropped. I called my supervisor, a guy named Frank Guidry. Been running Mount Hope Cemetery since before I started. Soil collapse, he said. Happens sometimes. Water finds a void, washes things out underneath. Fill it back in. So I did. Brought in fresh soil, tamped it down, made it level again. 2 weeks later, another rain. Heavier this time. Thunder that shook the windows of the maintenance shed. The grave sank again, deeper this time, almost a foot. And the shape was wrong. The depression wasn't uniform anymore. It was wider on one end, narrower on the other, like something underneath had turned. Frank came out personally, stood there with his hands on his hips, staring at that sunken plot like it had insulted him. "We're going to have to dig it back up," he said. "Check the vault. Make sure it's not cracked." Vaults are concrete boxes we put caskets in. Keeps the ground from settling, protects the coffin from the earth pressing down. They're solid, heavy, don't crack easy. We scheduled the excavation for the following week. Brought in a backhoe. I supervised. We dug carefully. You don't want to hit the vault wrong, damage anything. About 4 feet down, we should have hit concrete. We didn't find it until 5.5 feet. The vault had sunk, not just settled. Sunk, like the earth beneath it had opened up and swallowed it deeper. Frank climbed down into the hole. I followed. The vault looked intact, no cracks, no damage. But when we cleared the soil from around it, I saw something that made my stomach turn. The vault had rotated, maybe 15 degrees. The top wasn't aligned with the bottom anymore. Like something inside had shifted its weight. "Foundation failure," Frank said. His voice didn't sound convinced. Soil wasn't as stable as we thought. We reset the vault, used steel straps, a crane, the whole setup. Positioned it level, checked it 3 times, backfilled with compacted gravel and clay. Made that grave stronger than any other plot in the cemetery. Frank patted my shoulder. "That should hold." It didn't. 4 days later, no rain this time. The grave sank again. I found it on my morning rounds. The depression was back, deeper. And this time there was something else. Cracks in the soil, radiating out from the center of the grave, like something underneath had pushed up, then settled back down. Like something had moved. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, just staring. The morning was quiet. No wind, no birds, just me and that grave, and the feeling crawling up my spine that something was very wrong. I called Frank. He didn't answer. Left a voicemail. Then I did something stupid. Something I've regretted every day since. I stayed. I wanted to understand. 23 years of digging graves. I'd never seen soil behave like this. Never seen a plot that wouldn't stay put. So I brought a folding chair from the shed, sat down about 20 feet away, and watched. The sun moved across the sky. Morning turned to afternoon. Nothing happened. But around 4 p.m., when the shadows started growing long, I heard it. Gurgling, deep, wet, like water moving through a pipe, or air bubbling through mud, coming from the ground. I stood up, walked closer. The sound got louder, not constant, rhythmic, In and out, in and out. Like breathing, I knelt beside the sunken plot, put my hand on the soil. It was warm, not sun-warm, deeper than that, like body heat radiating up through 6 feet of earth. The gurgling stopped. I held my breath, listening. The cemetery was silent. No traffic from the road, no lawn equipment, nothing. Then the ground beneath my hand moved. Not much. Just a tiny shift, a twitch like a muscle spasm beneath skin. I jerked backward, fell on my ass, scrambled away from that grave like it had burned me. The soil settled, went still. But I could see it now, the way the depression had changed shape. The way it looked less like a sinkhole and more like an impression. Like something underneath had pressed against the earth from below, testing it, then relaxed. I grabbed my chair, left it, went straight to my truck. Frank called me back around 6. I told him everything. He went quiet for a long time. "You working tonight?" he asked. "No, sir. Off at 5. "Good. Go home. We'll look at it tomorrow." But I couldn't go home. Not yet. I drove to the parish records office, stayed until they closed at 7, going through files. I wanted to know who else had been buried in Section 7. Whether there were other plots with problems. There weren't. Section 7 had been opened in 2008. 37 graves. Dale Roscoe was number 38. Every other burial was fine. No settling, no sinking. Just that one plot. I found Dale Roscoe's death certificate. Massive myocardial infarction, heart attack, died at home in bed. His wife found him in the morning. But there was a note attached to the autopsy report. Something the medical examiner had flagged. Subject shows signs of agonal respiration post-mortem. Musculature indicates sustained struggle. Unclear timeline. Agonal respiration. That's when your body keeps trying to breathe after your heart stops. Gasping, irregular. It usually lasts seconds, maybe a minute. But the note said, sustained. I drove back to Mount Hope. I don't know why. The gates were locked, but I had a key. I parked by the maintenance shed, grabbed a flashlight. Section 7 was at the back of the cemetery. Quarter-mile walk through the plots. The moon was up, almost full. Gave everything a blue-gray cast. I could see Dale Roscoe's grave from 50 feet away. It had sunk again. This time the coffin was visible. Just the corner. Bronze. Catching moonlight. Sticking up through the collapsed soil at an angle like something had pushed it from underneath. Rotated it. Forced it toward the surface. I should have left. Should have called Frank, called the police, called someone. But I walked closer. Shined my flashlight into the depression. The soil around the exposed coffin was wet. Not rain wet. Slick. And it was moving. Slowly. Rhythmically. Rising and falling by maybe half an inch. Breathing. The earth was breathing. I heard that gurgling sound again, louder now, and underneath it, something else. A scraping. Metal on concrete. Like the coffin was shifting inside the vault. Like something inside was trying to get out. Or trying to get comfortable. I ran. Dropped my flashlight. Didn't stop until I reached my truck. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the key in the ignition. I called Frank from the parking lot. Told him I was done. He tried to talk me out of it, said we'd figure it out, but I didn't care. 23 years was enough. They excavated Dale Roscoe's grave the next day. Brought in structural engineers, soil specialists, the whole team. I heard about it from one of the other workers. They found the vault cracked. Not from external pressure, from inside. Stress fractures radiating out from the center like something had been pushing against the concrete. repeatedly. The coffin was intact, sealed, but it had rotated almost 90 degrees inside the vault. The handles were scraped. The bronze was scratched. They opened it. Dale Roscoe looked exactly like he had at his funeral, hands folded, suit neat, face peaceful. But his nails were broken, skin torn underneath, and the satin lining inside the coffin lid was shredded. The medical examiner ruled it post-mortem muscular contraction, said sometimes bodies move after death, muscles spasm, contract, can last for hours in rare cases. But I touched that grave, felt it move beneath my hand, heard it breathe. Dale Roscoe's heart stopped in his sleep. But something in him kept going. Something that didn't understand it was dead. Something that woke up in the dark, 6 feet under, and started struggling. They reburied him. Different cemetery, different parish. I don't know if that grave stays put. I work at a hardware store now, sell paint and lumber, safe work, quiet work. But sometimes at night, when I'm lying in bed trying to sleep, I think about all the other graves I've dug, all those plots I've filled and tamped and leveled, and I wonder how many of them are still breathing. I've worked at Riverside Cemetery in Natchitoches for 31 years. Started when I was 22, fresh out of high school, needed a job that didn't ask too many questions. Cemetery work suited me. Quiet, predictable. The dead don't complain, but they do other things. Father Ambrose Talbot died in October of 1953. Stroke. He was 71, spent 40 years as parish priest at Sacred Heart Church, just down the road from the cemetery. Good man, by all accounts. Ran a food kitchen during the Depression, visited the sick, did what priests are supposed to do. They buried him in Section 3, near the old magnolia tree. Simple headstone, gray granite, nothing fancy. And every year, on October 15th, the anniversary of his death, a lantern appears by his grave. I saw it for the first time in 1994. I was working late, finishing up after a burial. The sun had set maybe 20 minutes earlier. That October twilight that turns everything purple and soft. I was loading tools into the shed when I caught movement near Section 3. A light, pale yellow, flickering. I figured someone had left a candle. Families do that sometimes. Memorial vigils. I walked over to check it. Open flame in a cemetery is a fire hazard, especially this time of year when everything's dry. But when I got close, maybe 30 feet away, the light moved. Not blowing in the wind, not swaying. It moved. Drifted sideways about 10 feet, then stopped. Hovered maybe 3 feet off the ground, just hanging there beside Father Talbot's headstone. I stopped walking. My brain was trying to make it make sense. Reflection off a car window, light from the church. But the church was dark. The parking lot was empty. The light flickered once, twice, then went out. I stood there in the growing dark for maybe 5 minutes, waiting, listening. Nothing happened. Eventually, I went back to the shed, locked up, went home. Didn't mention it to anyone. Figured my eyes were playing tricks. But the next October 15th, it happened again. Same time, same place. That pale yellow light flickering by Father Talbot's grave. This time I watched from a distance, stayed by the maintenance building, kept still. The light appeared around 7:30 p.m., hovered for maybe 10 minutes, then drifted north, toward the older section of the cemetery, and vanished near the tree line. I asked around, talked to some of the older workers. A guy named Vernon, he'd been there since the 60s, just nodded when I mentioned it. Father's lantern, he said. Been doing that since he died. Every anniversary. Someone's bringing it, I said. Playing a prank. Vernon shook his head. Check the gate logs. Nobody comes in after dark on the 15th. Nobody living anyway. I thought he was messing with me. But I checked. He was right. October 15th, every year. The gates closed at 6 p.m. No visitors after that. No cars in the lot. Just me and the groundskeeper on duty. And that light. For years, I just accepted it. Cemetery work teaches you that some things don't have explanations. You learn to look the other way. Mind your business. Go home. But last October, something changed. I was doing my usual late patrol, making sure everything was locked up. It was the 15th. I knew the light would show up. I'd seen it probably 15 times by then. Usually I just watched for a minute, then moved on. This time, I decided to follow it. I don't know why. Maybe after 31 years, you get curious. Maybe I was tired of not knowing. Whatever the reason, when that pale yellow light appeared by Father Talbot's grave and started drifting north, I followed. I kept my distance, maybe 40 feet back. The light moved slowly, steady, like someone carrying it was in no hurry. It passed through Section 4, then Section 5. The older parts of the cemetery, where the stones are weathered and tilted, dates from the 1800s. The light stopped at the far north corner, near the fence line, where the live oaks grow thick and the ground gets uneven. I moved closer, crouched behind a mausoleum, watched. The light hovered over a spot of bare earth. No headstone, no marker, just grass and weeds. It flickered there for maybe 30 seconds, then went out. Complete darkness. I waited for my eyes to adjust, used my phone flashlight to navigate back. But I marked the spot in my memory, near the fence, beside an oak with a split trunk, about 10 feet from the old Guidry family plot. The next morning, I went back in daylight, found the spot, clear as anything. A depression in the ground, maybe 6 feet by 3 feet, rectangular, like a grave. But there was no marker, no record in my mental map of the cemetery. And I know every plot, know where the empty spaces are, where we've got room for new burials. This spot shouldn't exist. I went to the office, pulled the maps. Section 5, north corner. According to the records, that area was buffer space, never used for burials, just maintained as open ground. But that depression was real. Shaped like a grave, settled like a grave, old like a grave. I spent my lunch break in the parish archives. Sacred Heart keeps records going back to the 1840s. Burial logs, death certificates, church registry. I went through October 1953, the month Father Talbot died. Found something that made my hands go cold. A notation, barely legible, written in pencil at the bottom of the page for October 23rd. Burial, unmarked. Plot declined by family. Rites performed by Father A.T. Location, north boundary. No name, no age, no cause of death. Just that note. 8 days after Father Talbot died, he'd buried someone. Or rather, the church had. And they'd done it without a marker, without a record in the cemetery ledger. That kind of burial means one of two things. Either the person had no family to pay for a proper plot, or the family didn't want them buried in consecrated ground. I went back that night, brought my shovel. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I wanted to confirm it was really a grave. Maybe I just needed to know. The sun was setting when I reached the spot. That same purple twilight. The air smelled like rain coming. I pushed the shovel into the ground. The soil gave easily. Too easily. Like it had been disturbed before. Recently. I dug maybe 6 inches down when I heard it. A sound. Behind me. Like a footstep. Soft. Deliberate. I turned around. The lantern was there. 10 feet away. Hovering at chest height. That same pale yellow light. Flickering. But this time I could see what was behind it. Or rather, what wasn't behind it. The light had no source. No wick. No flame. No glass housing. Just luminescence hanging in the air. Casting shadows on the ground that moved wrong. That bent at angles that didn't match the light. My throat went dry. The shovel felt heavy in my hands. The light flickered. Once. Then started moving. Toward me. I stepped back. My heel caught on something. I went down hard. Landed on my back in the dirt. The shovel fell beside me. The light stopped directly overhead. I could feel warmth from it. Not heat. Warmth. Like standing near a person. Then it went out. I lay there in the dark, heart hammering, waiting for something to happen, for hands to grab me, for voices, for anything. Nothing came. Eventually I got up, grabbed my shovel, walked back to the shed. My legs felt unsteady. My mouth tasted like copper. I didn't tell anyone. Locked up, went home, tried to sleep, couldn't. The next morning, I got a call from Vernon. He was doing early rounds. "You lose your shovel?" he asked. "No, it's in the shed." "Well, there's one sticking out of the ground in Section 5, north corner. Thought it might be yours." I drove back, found Vernon standing by the fence line, staring at something on the ground. My shovel, standing upright in the dirt, exactly where I'd been digging the night before. But I'd brought it back, put it in the shed, locked the door. Vernon looked at me. His face was very serious. "You went to the unmarked plot." I nodded. "Father's been guarding it for 70 years, Vernon said quietly. "Some graves aren't meant to be opened. Some things are buried unmarked for a reason." "What's down there?" I asked. Vernon shook his head. "Don't know. Don't want to know. Father Talbot took that secret with him. Whatever he buried it without blessing, without prayer. That tells you everything you need to know." I pulled my shovel out of the ground. The blade was clean. No dirt, no rust. Like it had been washed, or like it had never touched the earth at all. That was 11 months ago. I still work at Riverside, still do my rounds, still lock up at night. But I don't go to Section 5 after dark anymore. And when October 15th comes around next week, I'll stay in the shed. Let Father Talbot's lantern do its patrol without me. Because I understand now what I didn't before. Some things aren't buried to be forgotten. They're buried to be watched. And Father Talbot's still watching. Still walking his rounds every year on the anniversary of his death. Still making sure that unmarked grave stays closed. I've worked here 31 years. I know every plotma, every name, every story, except that one. And after what I saw, I plan to keep it that way. I've been a coroner in Caddo Parish for 17 years. I've seen bodies pulled from the Red River after 3 weeks in summer heat. I've cataloged gunshot wounds, overdoses, house fires. I thought I'd seen every variation of what happens when a human body stops being a person and becomes evidence. I was wrong. It happened on a Tuesday night in late September. The air was thick, that particular Louisiana humidity that sits on your chest like a wet towel. We were out at Oakwood Cemetery, about 40 minutes outside Shreveport. The exhumation order came through that afternoon, routine forensic review for an insurance dispute. The deceased, a man named Curtis Bellamy, had been buried 8 months prior. His family contested the cause of death, wanted a second autopsy. Standard procedure. Nothing about the paperwork raised any flags. We arrived around 11 p.m. Night exhumations aren't unusual. Keeps the media away, spares the families from curious onlookers. I had my assistant, a kid named Troy Finch, maybe 26, good with details. 2 cemetery workers operated the backhoe. Their supervisor, Randall, stood off to the side with a clipboard, making sure we didn't damage anything we weren't supposed to. The dig went smooth at first. Soil came up dark and damp. The backhoe's engine growled in steady rhythm. Then metal scraped metal. We'd hit the vault. That's the concrete box that holds the casket. Protects it from the earth pressing down. Troy and I climbed into the hole to attach the straps. That's when I felt it. A hum. Not a sound exactly, more like a vibration traveling up through my boots. I stopped, hand on the vault lid. "You feel that?" I asked. Troy nodded. His face had gone pale under the work lights. "What is that?" Randall called down from above. "Generator, probably. Let's keep moving." But it wasn't the generator. I've worked 100 night exhumations. I know what equipment sounds like. This was different. This came from below. We hoisted the vault lid. Inside, the casket looked intact. Mahogany, brass handles. Expensive. The kind of box that costs more than most people make in 3 months. That's when it happened. The lid moved. Not much. Maybe half an inch. But it lifted, just slightly, then settled back down, like something inside had pushed against it. Exhaled. Troy stumbled backward, nearly fell. "Did you?" "I saw it." Nobody spoke. The backhoe had gone quiet. I could hear crickets in the grass beyond the lights, could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. "Could be gas buildup," I said. Tried to keep my voice steady. "Bodies release methane as they decompose. Sometimes it creates pressure." But I didn't believe it. Gas doesn't make a casket lid rise like that. Doesn't make it settle back down so gently. Randall leaned over the edge of the hole. "We doing this, or what?" I knelt beside the casket, put my hands on the lid. The wood felt warm. Not sun warm or ambient temperature warm. Body warm. Like something living was pressed against the other side. "Help me with this," I told Troy. He didn't move. "Troy." He came forward, hands shaking. Together we worked the seal. Modern caskets locked tight, rubber gaskets, pressure seals. It took both of us to break it loose. The smell hit first, but not decay. That's what should have been there. 8 months of decomposition, even in a sealed casket. Instead, it smelled like turned earth, like a root cellar, like waiting. We lifted the lid. Curtis Bellamy looked exactly like his funeral photos. Not bloated, not discolored. His skin still had color. His hair lay neat across his forehead. He wore a gray suit, hands folded across his chest. Everything positioned exactly as it had been the day they buried him, except his mouth. It was open, wide, jaw extended like he'd been screaming, and the inside of the casket lid. Troy made a sound, somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. The wood was destroyed. Long gouges, deep scratches, splinters torn away. like something, someone had clawed at it. Frantically, desperately. The satin lining hung in shreds. But Curtis Bellamy's fingernails were clean, intact. No tissue under them, no blood, no wood fragments. Post-mortem contraction, I heard myself say. Muscles can spasm after death, sometimes for hours. Sometimes they... Troy grabbed my arm. "Do you hear that?" I did. A voice, soft, barely audible, coming from the casket. Not yet. 2 words, whispered, like someone speaking from the bottom of a well. Not yet. I've worked death for 17 years. I've seen things that would empty a normal person's stomach. But I've never heard a corpse speak. Randall called down again. "Everything okay?" I couldn't answer. I was staring at Curtis Bellamy's face, his open mouth, waiting for it to move, waiting for those lips to form words. Troy climbed out of that hole so fast he left tool marks in the dirt wall. Randall helped pull him up. I stayed. Don't know why. Maybe because I needed to understand. Maybe because after 17 years, you stop being afraid of the dead. Or maybe I just hadn't met the right corpse yet. I reached down, touched Curtis Bellamy's hand. His skin felt wrong. Not cold like a body in refrigeration. Not warm like something living. Somewhere in between, like he was suspended. The medical examiner's report listed cause of death as cardiac arrest. Sudden, unexpected. Curtis was 41, no prior conditions. His wife found him in bed one morning, just gone. But standing there in that hole, staring at those claw marks, I wondered, what if he wasn't gone? What if his heart stopped, but something else kept going? Some part of him that doesn't show up on EKGs or brain scans. Some part that woke up in the dark, 6 feet under, and realized it was trapped. We closed the casket. Logged everything. I wrote post-mortem contraction in my report because that's what the paperwork demanded. But every man who touched that casket heard it. Troy won't talk about it. Refuses. Randall requested a transfer to a different cemetery. I still do exhumations. Still go out on Tuesday nights when the orders come through. But now, before we break the seal, I listen. Sometimes if the night is quiet enough, I hear it again. Not yet. And I wonder, how many others are down there? Waiting, whispering, clawing at lids nobody will ever open. Curtis Bellamy was reburied 3 days later. Different plot, different cemetery. His casket is still warm. I've examined over 2,000 bodies in my career as a coroner. I know what death looks like. I know the stages, the timeline, the chemistry. I know that flesh doesn't last, that bone eventually wins, that 80 years underground leaves nothing but skeleton and maybe some scraps of cloth. So when the Diocese of New Orleans contacted me about exhuming Sister Veronica Mabry, I expected bones. Maybe some hair. That's it. I was catastrophically wrong. The exhumation was scheduled for early October. The air had finally cooled, though not much. This is Louisiana. We were at St. Catherine's Cemetery in Baton Rouge, a small Catholic burial ground tucked behind an old brick church. The place had been there since the 1890s. Moss hung from the oak trees like gray curtains. The kind of spot that feels removed from time, even at noon. Sister Veronica had been buried in 1945, died at 43. The records said she devoted her life to caring for the poor, running a clinic out of the church basement during the Depression. Locals claimed she had healing hands, said she could ease fevers with a touch, calm seizures with a prayer. The diocese wanted to investigate her for beatification, the first step toward sainthood. That meant examining her remains, documenting any signs of incorruptibility. Incorruptibility. That's the phenomenon where a saint's body doesn't decay normally. The Church considers it a sign of divine preservation. Scientifically, it's usually explained by embalming chemicals, soil composition, or environmental factors. Low oxygen, high mineral content, nothing supernatural. I brought my colleague, a forensic anthropologist named Rita Dupree. She specializes in historical remains. We'd worked together before on colonial-era excavations. Rita doesn't spook easy. We started digging at 7 a.m. The grave was deep, 6 feet, old style. Back then, they didn't use concrete vaults, just wooden coffins straight into the earth. I expected the box to be collapsed. The wood rotted through after 8 decades. But when the cemetery workers' shovels hit something solid, I heard wood. Intact wood. Rita looked at me. That's unusual. We cleared the dirt carefully, brushed it away with hand tools. The coffin emerged whole. Simple pine, darkened with age, but structurally sound. No collapse, no cave-in. Soil preservation, I said. Must be the mineral content. Rita didn't respond. She was staring at the coffin like it was something alive. We hoisted it out with straps. Set it on the grass beside the grave. A priest stood nearby. Father Lyle Brennan, maybe 60. Gray hair, kind eyes. He'd brought a photographer to document everything. Standard procedure for beatification cases. I knelt beside the coffin, put my hand on the lid. The wood felt cold, expected. But there was something else. A faint vibration, like a hum running through it. You feel that? I asked Rita. She nodded. Her face had gone very still. Father Brennan stepped closer. What is it? Probably traffic, I said. Vibrations from the road. But we were half a mile from the nearest highway. I worked the seal. The coffin wasn't nailed shut, just a simple sliding lid. It took some effort, swollen with moisture and time. But it gave. I heard Rita inhale sharply beside me. The smell came first. Not decay. Not the thick, gagging stench of decomposition. Roses, fresh-cut roses, sweet and overwhelming, like walking into a florist's cooler. I lifted the lid. Sister Veronica Mabry lay inside, exactly as she must have looked the day they buried her. Her habit was still black, though faded. Her hands were folded across her chest, holding a wooden rosary. And her face looked alive. Not bloated or discolored, not mummified or leathered. Her skin was pale, smooth, almost translucent. Like milk glass. Her lips had color. Her eyelids were closed, lashes dark against her cheeks. Embalming, I heard myself say. They must have used formaldehyde, high concentration. That would preserve. Rita grabbed my wrist. Look at her hands. The skin was moist. Not wet, not decomposing. Moist. Like she'd just washed them. Like blood still moved underneath. Father Brennan made the sign of the cross, whispered something in Latin. The photographer's camera clicked. Once, twice, then stopped. He lowered it slowly, staring. We need to move her, I said. Get her to the examination table. Rita and I reached into the coffin, slid our hands beneath Sister Veronica's shoulders and knees. Her body felt light, too light, like hollow bones, bird bones. We lifted her. That's when it started. Clear liquid began seeping from beneath her closed eyelids, slowly at first. Just small drops gathering at the corners, then more. Steady, running down her temples into her hair. She was crying. Rita's hands were shaking. That's not possible. It's embalming fluid, I said. My voice sounded thin, distant. Pressure from movement. It's forcing preserved fluids out through, but I couldn't finish. Because the tears weren't stopping. They ran in steady streams, soaking into the fabric of her habit. And with them, the smell of roses grew stronger, suffocating. Father Brennan dropped to his knees, started praying. The photographer backed away, camera forgotten. I've seen bodies leak before, purge fluid, decomposition gases forcing liquid out through any opening. But that's dark, viscous, foul-smelling. This was clear, clean, like water, like tears. Rita set Sister Veronica's legs down gently, stepped back. I can't do this. It's a chemical reaction, I said. But my hands were trembling. When we moved her, we created pressure. The fluid has nowhere to go. She's crying, Rita said. Her voice broke. Look at her face. I looked. Sister Veronica's expression had changed. Not much, just slightly. Her mouth. It had been relaxed before. Now it curved downward, just barely, like grief, like sorrow. The liquid kept coming, dripping onto the grass. And I noticed something else. Where the tears fell, the grass seemed greener, brighter, like something in those drops fed the earth. We laid her on the examination table we'd set up under a tent. I took samples of the fluid, photographed everything, measured her body temperature, 68 degrees, ambient, expected. But when I touched her skin to position her arm, it felt warm. Just for a second, just beneath the surface, like something was waking up. The analysis took 3 days. The fluid came back as mostly water. Trace minerals, sodium, potassium. Nothing unusual. Nothing that explained the preservation. The embalming records from 1945 showed they'd used standard formaldehyde solution. Nothing special. Nothing that would keep a body intact for 80 years. Rita refused to continue the investigation. Put in her resignation. Father Brennan called it a miracle. The diocese fast-tracked Sister Veronica's beatification process. I wrote natural preservation due to environmental factors in my report, because that's what science demanded. But I've examined 2,000 bodies, and I know what death looks like. Sister Veronica Mabry didn't look dead. She looked like she was sleeping, waiting. And when we disturbed her, when we pulled her from the earth where she'd rested for 8 decades, something in her knew, something responded. They reburied her the following week. Different location, a tomb inside the church, visible behind glass so pilgrims can visit. I attended the reinterment, watched them seal her inside marble and steel. Her eyes were still closed, but I swear, right before they shut the tomb, I saw moisture gathering beneath her lids again, and the smell of roses followed me home. I don't do sainthood investigations anymore. When the diocese calls, I decline, because I understand now what I didn't before. Some bodies don't want to be disturbed. Some sleep holds consciousness we can't measure. And when you wake them, even accidentally, they know. Sister Veronica Mabry weeps behind glass now. Pilgrims say her tears cure sickness. They collect the moisture that appears on the tomb's interior, dab it on their foreheads like holy water. Maybe they're right. Maybe it is divine. But I touched those tears, felt them on my skin, and they felt like grief.